We are working on an individual part of the multi-character mural piece that I'm doing for Marvel, which I believe will be physically seen in their offices. The assembled combined might of all the paintings I'm doing will make up one giant composition of all these individual figures standing together. And I thought that that kind of thing would be most impressive if they were life-size figures that you could stand next to and feel like you were amongst these real characters. I've been working on this composition the entire year, and it grew in size from initially what had been one layout of a certain length of characters to when I got the full measurement of the wall they wanted me to fill, I realized it was now double the size of the piece I had spec'd out. I initially started with a sketch about this size, just an 11 by 17, where I had worked out the main figures that I thought might comprise the wall. I'm expanding it out to include the original X-Men all grouping together here, which I love doing that. Cap's partner Falcon in his classic appearance, throwing in a couple of the Inhumans, Hawkeye, and ending with Punisher. And even on this side here, as much as I added these 6 figures to expand it out this way, I still figured out another couple of ways to squeeze in, like I'm putting in Ghost Rider on his motorbike, and then Shang-Chi, I'm squeezing him in here. I also did a marker comp showing how the shadow placement in the paintings is going to be very striking. And then I did do a color sketch on the copies so that I could show them fully. Here's what the final thing will look like. It was all assembled in one file that they approved, and then I was off to the races. So far, I have 35 characters total in the painting. Each single character is its own painting so that we can combine them together in a final layout where they're all standing next to one another, but each individual piece can be used in other ways. They could be corner box art, they could be posters unto themselves, or make different pairings. Every painting I've done individually, each one is about a day's work. Some are more complex than others, like say the standing figures, especially if somebody has a cape or they're particularly tall, like the Hulk or Thor. Those have a lot more space that they demand physically, and sometimes just can be the details in a costume can take a lot more work. Say the chrome in a character like Colossus or Iron Man. There's a lot of work put into rendering that out. All superheroes' outfits are essentially skin. The sad part of the way that people talk about superheroes and largely dismiss them is when they'll say, well, those are spandex characters. And it's like, well, for one thing, spandex has been around for, I think, less than 50 years. It's not about whether or not these are tights or made of cotton or whatever they're made of. It's really drawings of the human form in its purest state. That's the kind of entertainment you're absorbing when you follow comics, is it's sort of like a pure id of humanity. So when you see, why are things always these tight costumes? It's like, well, because they're not costumes. It's just stripping the human avatar down to its most fundamental component. From the very, very beginning, Marvel was probably the center point of my comics experience, because I went from drawing things based around fairy tales and storybooks. Things like Jack and the Beanstalk were things I was drawing when I was 3, but once I saw Spider-Man at the age 4, my interest turned really sharply in that direction. And so for the remainder of my life, I was drawing characters focusing around superhero themes. But my versions of the characters are often purely of comic book roots, and then there's my distillation of that influence in the way that I represent them. You know, the thing is that I've made the argument the entirety of my career that what I was trying to embrace was the timeless versions of characters, because when I got in the business in the late 80s, in 89, most of the published characters were going through a transformation of one type or another, usually meaning that they were being redesigned, new costumes. So creating a composition like what I've done here is my way of making the case for these are the eternal versions of these characters. The enjoyment about doing big group shots is the feeling of hitting a lot of characters that I love to spend time with, that I may never spend the kind of creative time with, like I told full adventures with these characters, or multiple pages of storytelling and in painting. So this might be my only statement on that given character, so I try and put my all into it. I'm hoping to accomplish something that sort of scratches the creative itch to want to connect with these properties that I've enjoyed since childhood.